Good afternoon, fellow anti-novelists, Lilligans, curious onlookers, and friends, and welcome to my new subscribers. I am grateful for every single one of you for joining me on this journey as I'm writing Zettelkasten for Fiction, where imagination finds order, which is the book I'm writing for you to help you get your writing done. So, it's another 100-degree day here on the cattle ranch in the library in Missouri. So I thought, what better thing to do since I literally just saw a school bus go by my window, which is funny because I live 2 miles down a country road. So seeing a school bus is kind of like seeing a UFO out here, but it's kind of cool. And I thought, ooh, it's back to school time. So let's do some vocab review. I know a lot of you are new to the writing process. I can tell by the questions I'm getting. So I want to jump in and just walk you through some key terms so that when I make reference to things, you know what I'm talking about. Let's start easy. The types of writers. I did a whole video on this, so I won't dwell on it. But your first type of writer is a plotter or a planner. This is a person that likes to methodically plot and plan out the story points before they start writing so they have a good map in order to write to. My second is a pantser or a discovery writer. It's someone who writes by the seat of their pants. They don't need a plotted out detailed outline or plot structure. They just start writing, see where the writing takes them, and then go back and revise. There's a plantser, which is a combination of the two. That's someone who uses both. And there's a puzzler who uses all of those elements. They do some writing, they do some planning, they jigsaw it together, and they go again. So let's get on to the good stuff, which is types of writing. What I want to look at here are the parts of the writing process, because some of you are a little fuzzy on how these things fit together and work out. So let's get into it. The first step in the writing process is to brainstorm. I taught college writing for 16 years, and this, for my students, was always the most fun part because it's no holds barred. Whether you're a plotter, a planner, or in between, brainstorming is just getting that stuff down on the page so that you've got something to work with. Sometimes brainstorming is also referred to as your zero draft. That means you're just playing with those ideas. You haven't really gotten into the writing yet. Now, I've made a note about outlines, so let's flip this card and see what it tells us. Different kinds of outlines. First, there's a keyword outline. A keyword outline just is what it sounds like. It's 1 or 2 words that just tell you, okay, in the opening scene, it's this, then it's this, then there's that, then there's that. So you're just walking yourself through with a few keywords that help you walk through the story. The next more robust kind of outline is a phrase or a thought outline. Just like what it sounds like, rather than keywords, you're just using phrases or ideas of thoughts to help guide you through where you think your story should go. The next one is the first sentence or the chapter title outline. Maybe you've done a lot of thinking about this book that you're writing, and you already know some of your titles, so you're going to put those in the order you think they go. And then maybe you know some of the first sentences or how you want your story structure to go just by sentences. So you're going to use those to create the outline. And that's going to tell you, okay, this one goes before that one and that one needs to come after this one. So you're moving those sentences around and that helps give you a trail through the story. Next is scene by scene. Maybe you don't have that first sentence or those chapter titles worked out, but you definitely know more than just keywords. Maybe what you've dialed into are your scenes. So you're going to say, okay, we're going to start in the coffee shop, and then we're going to be at the bookstore, and then we're going to be at her apartment, and so on and so forth. So you're just going to line out those scenes in the order that you think they go. Then you can start doing the writing. The next one is the full sentence, just what it sounds like. Rather than key terms or snippets or bits or scenes, you're going to use full sentences in order to tell yourself where your story's going. And you may use annotation. An annotated outline just means you've gone back through your outline and you start filling in those notes to yourself. So that could almost be a second process in the outlining process. Finally, you've got short form. That's using a whole paragraph to describe each section of your story. That way, you've got a nice firm grip on the tone of the story. You kind of know how you want things to go, and you're using paragraphs to describe that out for yourself. So let's go back over to the official writing process. After we get through brainstorming and the zero draft, and maybe we've got our outline, then we're going to actually start drafting it out. Your first draft is officially what's referred to as your WIP, your WIP. That's your work in progress. When it's up in the brainstorming zero draft section, It may not necessarily qualify as a work in progress yet because you're still just fleshing out those ideas. But once you get to drafting, bingo, you're officially a work in progress. So what does that look like? It could be just the rough draft. That's just following along either your structure as you've outlined it or your ideas as you're doing the discovery writing, and you're just roughly drafting out those ideas. You may choose instead to do a dialogue draft. So rather than writing the story with all of the elements of the scene and the setting and the people and the dialogue and the action, etc., you're just going to write out the dialogue. Maybe this is a very character-driven story that you're writing, and so you're going to write out all of their conversations, and then you're going to go back and fill in those scene and setting details. Totally up to you. Next, we've got a technical draft. This is where you're literally going through and filling in those technical aspects of your story. For example, really dialed in details. This needs to work this way because that's going to have to work that way, and that's going to create this problem. So you're really just getting into the technical aspects of building your story. And that brings us to world building or setting. Maybe you're going to write out a draft of your story just building out the world. That alone can take quite some time. I know people who've been stuck in world building for years. Don't do that. Get to the actual writing of the story. But if the world and the setting are what's most interesting to you off the bat, start there with that first draft. Next in the process is editing. So once you get through all of this drafting and fleshing this stuff out, then you're going to start the editing process, and that's when you start polishing up your work so it becomes more finished and ready for readers. I'm going to talk about types of readers in just a second. That all brings you to a final draft. That's when you're ready to share it with someone. But first, let's unpack editing just a little bit more. In the editing process, you've got real-time editing during your drafting. So you're actually making those changes as you go. Maybe you write a scene or you write a chapter and then you go back and you revisit it. Maybe you annotate, do some editing, and then keep going. The important thing is always keep moving forward. Don't get stuck in re-editing the same piece 48 times because you're not going to make very much progress. The next kind of editing is the revisions of your draft. Again, if you do a complete draft and then go back and start revising, you've got a full piece of work to work with. Otherwise, you're just revising as you go. Annotation, we've talked about that. That's going back through your draft and making notes to yourself about, ooh, I need to add this here, or that doesn't make sense there, or what if I did that over there? You're just talking to yourself within the manuscript. A developmental or a continuity edit comes after all these things are done. This is another formal step in the editing process where you're actually looking at the continuity of every single thing that happens in your story between plot, character, and every aspect. In my course, I teach using a cause and effect tracker that will be included in the book Zettelkasten for Fiction. So you'll actually have your own cause and effect tracker to help do a continuity edit on your own story. After developmental edit, it goes to proofreading. Proofreading, in addition to where developmental edits and continuity look for plot holes, proofreading is also looking at that. But the important part of proofreading is it's really getting down into the weeds of, does this story produce a cohesive narrative? And then you're going to go on again to revisions and down to a copy edit. A copy edit is the most line by line, comma by comma, detailed edit. Often it's the last one that you do, and that's the one that you want to hire a really good editor for, because you want your manuscript by the time it gets to the final draft to be pristine, perfect, and polished. So I will drop a link down below because I do a series on kinds of edits if you're interested in that. Once you get to the final draft, you are ready for different kinds of readers, and this is where I will leave you. Reading partners include critique partners and workshops. Those are resources that you work with during the writing process. They're with you from the time you put the pen on the page the very first time, all the way through maybe finishing your book. I'm in a workshop that we've been together now for quite some time, and we're all developing our projects together. Those are your critique partners. Then you go to an alpha reader. That's someone that you trust to read what you consider a finished draft of your book. They're going to dig in there and they're going to give you honest feedback. A beta reader comes next because once you incorporate all this feedback and you really polish up that manuscript, your beta reader is then going to pick it up and give you those final sets of comments that help you make it perfect so it's ready to be formally called finished. We'll talk about different kinds of editors to come. That's a whole nother topic, and I do have a separate video on that. This is where it would go to your formal editors, like for continuity and copy. And then your ARC reader. That is an advanced reader copy reader. This is the last stop before your book goes out to the actual public and is released. So ARC readers get an advanced reader copy that all of these processes have been completed, and they are the last stop to give you any feedback before your book goes out to the world. So there you go. That wraps up today's issue of a vocabulary back to school lesson for authors. So if I missed anything, or if there's anything you have a question about, drop me a comment down below. I would love to answer questions on this because I know there's been some confusion, so hopefully this helped. In the meantime, I'm going to get back to writing. I'm working on chapter 20 today of Zettelkasten for fiction, so I'm going to dive into that. You guys, get your pens on the page, get those words on the page because they won't stay in your head forever, and I will see you all tomorrow.